Kwekwe, Mino Pajashig, welcome. We're here today with Indigital Insights, Monique Manatch, Indigenous, Kitikanik, Anishinabek, and Ojibwa. My name is Monique Manatch, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And today we're going to I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Rae Corston. Rae is a multidisciplinary digital artist from Moose Cree First Nation. And Rae, you're a young woman, but you've been doing this for quite a while. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm in my early mid 20s right now, and I'm currently an animation student at Sheridan College. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my journey to where I am today and where I want to be, and generally talking about the animation industry and moving through Indigenous spaces. So, hi, I'm Rae, but my full name is Rachel Corston. And I'm an animation student, like I said, but I'm also an Indigenous youth and activist. I'm pretty active in my community. And this is me this past spring when I was doing canoe training in Palma Rapids. I'm actually going on a canoe trip like a week from now. And I'll talk a little bit about that because I think it's also relevant to Indigenous history in Moosonee and Moose Factory is that we're going along our ancestral route from the Kipling Dam up to my home, Moose Factory. And the waters have been changed by the dams since like the 1920s, and the dams are done without our consent. So we're just trying to reclaim that and have Indigenous youth form new connections with the water and the lands. And I wear kind of two hats. Like, I'm a community member, I'm an Indigenous woman, a Ililuwak, but I'm also an animation student in a Western institution. And then this is me dancing in a powwow this summer. And then this is me with my friend Sunny, and we're pretending to work while a photographer takes pictures of us with me at my desk. And you can see like long hours. Like I'm eating dinner here, I have my water, and I'm just like camped out for the day. Um, so this is my home, Moose Factory, on the coast of James Bay. But I didn't live there for most of my life. I was born here and lived here up until I was like 6 years old. But I moved to Thunder Bay and I lived there for 9 years. And the thing about Thunder Bay, it's interesting because it has a large indigenous population, but it's founded by like Scandinavian people. So it has a large European and native population. I don't know how many of you've heard stories about what's happening there, but it's actually pretty terrible. Like the racism's really bad. Um, but I lived there for a good chunk of my childhood. And then in my late teens, I moved back to Moose Factory, and then, of course, I got into college and I now live in Oakville, not 8 months out of the year. But I do come back home for the summer and winter holidays. So my home is really important to me. Like I said, I have lived out of town for school a majority of my life, but I come back every summer and winter break. And here we have 6 seasons. So here we have thaw out where the ice breaks up after freezing for the winter. And then we have a beautiful but short summer. And then it starts to get really cold in like October, and ice chunks start forming in the river, and you can see like a gloved hand here because it's really cold to boat over between the mainland and Moose Factory. Moose Factory is an island, by the way. Um, Fun little fact. So a lot of us have to do like helicopters and boats to access the mainland. And then our falls are really beautiful. This is me at the language camp on a Sawpit Island across from Moose Factory Island. And winters we typically drive over ice roads, and the ice is on the river for about 3 months of the year, so it's really accessible. It's nice, and we get the Wheaton Road that lets us have access down south with our trucks through Smooth Rock Falls. Um, and it's a really beautiful place. Like we do get quite a few tourists coming just to like fish and camp and learn more about Moose Cree history. It's a really interesting place. I love it. I love coming here. I'm here right now for the summer. I'm going back to school in September. And being like half foot in Moose Factory and half foot out in the city in Western institutions has been really difficult for me to navigate because I think a lot of like city natives will agree with me where you don't feel like you belong to one or the other completely. And it's been a long journey for me to like solidify my identity as like an indigenous woman, but also in the artist world because the artist world is very like Western centralized, and I've kind of had to adapt to both. So let's start. I'm sure most artists have this where it's just like as a kid, you would just draw all the time and draw little silly things, like I had like the sun in the corner with sunglasses and I would show my family and then they'd be so proud of me. And every child has this, where they're obsessed with drawing. And it makes me sad because in our community, I wish art was a little more promoted than it is because everyone's like, go to trade school, become a doctor, become a lawyer. No one ever tells you to become an artist, just there's just a little worm in your brain that makes you want to be an artist and you just can't stop drawing. Um, and then I discovered the internet, and this is about like when internet started really taking off when I was like a young kid and I was like on Webkins, a Club Penguin, and Roblox, but I kind of got like yeah. Um unlimited internet access because people didn't know like in the mid 2000s that the internet is a scary place and people can do whatever. Like the internet safety wasn't really like it was like don't meet up with strangers online. That was the extent of it. It wasn't like these little intricacies now where it's like social media. It was like a lot of forums. So being a kid, I was exposed to a lot of like interesting media. Um and I found that you could draw and make art online. There was a whole community around making art online. And I didn't know drawing tablets existed yet, so these were done with not a mouse, but a laptop trackpad. So for a long time, I was just drawing on trackpad using like Corel Paint, the software that came with my laptop. And this is like around like 12 years old, and I kind of had unlimited internet access. And I spent a lot of time online. But then I got my first drawing tablet. I saved up all of my babysitting money, and I got like one of those tablets that don't have a screen on them, and I just drew all the time. Like I was on Tumblr, YouTube, and I grew like a love of like anime, Homestuck, and Steven Universe. And I was just kind of learning like what digital art could be. And then I drew a lot. Like in like 3 years, like this is like a tiny fraction of the work I made. I was just drawing constantly. Like I loved cosplay, I loved conventions. I was very much like in the convention cosplay art space, like fan art. I didn't make a lot of original art at this point. Um and then in my late teens, I moved back to Moose Factory and I kind of moved into a traditional space and I didn't really have an artistic identity yet. I didn't know what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. I was actually applying the Western to get into astrophysics. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was just and this is the point of my life where my art started to slow down. Like I started thinking about it less. And these were just kind of assignments I made for my art class that were required of me. Um and then I don't know what happened, but I went to fine art foundations. And I'm definitely not a fine artist. I kind of stuck out in my class as like a weird like anime kid from like a reserve. Um and this is some of the stuff I did. As you can tell, I was just trying to meet requirements for my classes. And since it's fine art, they want you to be weird. They want the concepts to be weird. Um but it did lay the groundwork for like being professional as an artist. And then I graduated. Now what? Well, I like animation. I like cartoons. That was an interest I had when I was younger. So let's do animation. And I kind of went like put all my money into this. Like I worked full time out of school to like save money for art supplies, iPad, to go to conventions, like art conventions. And tutoring to get into animation school. And this is the kind of like the work I made in the late 2010s to apply to art schools. And I submitted it and I waited a month to hear back. And I got rejected. And it was so crushing not to get into my choice of animation school. And I think we all know what happened around this time. Yeah, I got rejected and then I got locked inside along with everyone else in the world. And it was such a sad, sad, sad time in my life. But I realized I had all this free time and I was unemployed. So I really focused on making animation happen for myself. So I worked from home in my bedroom in this factory and I was just animating, watching art tutorials all the time. And I was like hoping to like absorb the information from my animation books just by like sleeping on them and using them as a pillow. I like lived, sleep, breathed animation and I created this body of work and I got accepted to Sheridan Animation in 2021. But I had to do my first year online. But this was like the hard part had just begun. Like this is like maybe like a couple weeks worth of schoolwork. Like it's crushing the amount of work you have to do, and it's like not all of it's like pretty. Like a lot of it's like ugly, and they're just trying to get you used to like working hard and working a lot and getting your hand and eye used to like fine details. Like painting clouds doesn't really have a lot to do with animating, but it kind of like builds the foundation of like color and art theory. So now I'm at Sheridan. I'm going into my third year and I'm doing a stop motion group film with my classmates. And it's kind of all I really do. I during the summers I do like extra stuff though. Here's what's happening with me right now. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in Ireland and I co presented a workshop with my coworkers at the Graphic Medicine Conference. And I consulted on a comic and I directed a short film around medicine in Moose Factory. I'll speak a little more to that later, but it's a really cool opportunity that I got all expenses paid trip to like Ireland. I went to Dublin and Galway and I saw the Cliffs of Moher. It was a really cool opportunity and some of this work was with the local hospital here, Weenebayko Health Authority and University Health Network. It was really awesome and I was just kind of like the in person there speaking to my community like I'm a community member speaking to why this work is relevant to people struggling with heart disease. It was just a really cool opportunity. And I was also featured at CreFest. So I do mostly digital stuff, but I wanted to do like a, a gouache painting and make it like really big. And the theme is Future of Our Lands. So it was really awesome to be invited out to CreFest and also have my work in an exhibit with like 20 other amazing Omishkego artists from like all around the Hudson Bay and James Bay. Now, here is the short film I worked on. This is only a trailer. It's being screened in film festivals right now, so I can't show you the full thing.
For centuries, Moose Factory has been a gathering site for Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. Even in the face of adversity, the compassion and connectedness embraced within Cree culture has been shown to promote a healthy way of living. Many people outside the region don't understand that our heart health begins with our community. We may be seen by the doctors, but we don't always feel like they actually see us. In today's world, we face new problems every day, but we must work together to move beyond our little pond and explore the world of possibilities.
So let me talk a little bit about the film first, like some context. So last time in March last year, 2023, I got um asked by a person who works at the local hospital to consult in a graphic medicine report. And the graphic medicine report was researched on by Dr. Anne Samard and Dr. Sahar Wali. And it's around heart health and the struggles Indigenous people here have getting healthcare up north, because the only hospital is here, but the services they have are limited. They don't have the full staff. A lot of um, hospitals down south have. And also, this hospital serves all of the coast of James Bay. So that's like Peawanuck, Fort Albany, like these other communities have clinics, but they don't have like, not even here, we don't have like a surgeon on staff at all times. So like most babies are born down south now because they don't have a doctor on site to do a C-section. It's like a 2-day travel, and if you're in pain and like let's say you've had a heart attack and you need to be sent out for like surgery, it's a lot. But we wanted to come from a strength-based perspective when talking about this really grim subject. So we decided to turn the story of that into an animation. It's 5 minutes long, and all the characters are animals, and we have different animals representing different community members. So um, from the mainland to the island, we have boat taxis, and we decided to make the boat taxi driver an otter because it's a water animal. But when we were working with another animator on this, so our team has like 4 people on it, very small team for a big chunk of work to be done in a year. We had Dr. Sahar Wali, whose research it was based on, and she was managing the project. Me, local community member, was kind of doing like a lot of stuff. And then we had another intermediate animator on the team with us. And then we had an effects artist who did all the effects animation. And all these people have never really seen Moose Factory or understand the culture. And we did all of this through Zoom because they're in Toronto and I'm up here most of the time. So Beatrice, the other animator on our team, never seen Moose Factory before, and I told her to design an otter boat driver, and I provided her like reference images, and she came back to me with this skinny little otter, and I was like, "You need to make him fatter because like a lot of boat drivers are fat." So it's like interpreting these cultural things and translating them so people actually see themselves when we show this to them is really important. It's like other stuff too, where since the story is that Mr. Beaver gets in on the train, he travels through Moosonee on the river to Moose Factory to the hospital, and then he goes out to camp on a helicopter. And it kind of represents all the methods of travel we use to get to a hospital. Beatrice asked me, the other animator, why is it mostly male characters? And this is another thing where it's like Western versus like Indigenous perspectives, because typically a lot of like transportation, it's done by male workers in the community. Like you hardly ever see like I don't think I've ever seen a female boat driver, and it's mostly male taxi drivers. um and it just wouldn't be realistic to insert a female person there, or a female animal character. And in Western institutions, it's important that we have like these equal representation of women and men. And I said to Beatrice, like, well, culturally, like, we do have male and female roles, but it's it's not patriarchal, you know. Both roles are equally respected. Like, women have different roles than men. Like, let's say in ceremony, like the woman in ribbon skirts will clean out the sweat lodge, whereas the men will be in charge of bringing the rocks in. Like everyone works together. And we do have some female characters in the short, but not enough to meet like Western requirements of it being like 50-50. It just happens to be that since transportation is male dominated in community, we do have a lot of male characters since we're talking about transportation. So it's like these little things, these little intricacies are kind of like why I was brought into the project as mainly director, just to give like that community voice and realism. And we screen some of the animation to some people, in community, and they were really excited because we were really meticulous about making sure the backgrounds look like real places here and that people can relate while making it beautiful and making it like strength based, even though we're talking about like inadequacies between like down south and up here. So then me and Dr. Sahar Wali started writing the script together. I kind of have the general plot, and then she inserted the words based on her research and making sure it's culturally relevant. You know, we went over it with a community elder and different community members, and we started working on the design. And this is like the first sketches of Mr. Beaver I did in my sketchbook. And it got translated into a beautiful Mr. Beaver design. And then we started, based off Mr. Beaver's design, we kind of designed all these different characters around them. So we have a moose in the hospital, and he has a broken antler talking about his issue to some geese. And there's different patients here that are supposed to be community members with different migratory birds representing the doctors and nurses. And all these animals are local to our community, like specifically northern Ontario. And we chose the doctors and nurses to be migratory birds because they're locums. They come here for a couple of years to work and then they fly out to go elsewhere. So a lot of it's like we talked to community members about this and they were like, we should do this, you should do that. So it's not just the four of us that were working on it. We had multiple local consultants telling us like how we should design it and what should be in it. So then I storyboarded a majority of the film. That's kind of like my favorite discipline in animation is storyboarding. And then I recorded the dialogue, and my boyfriend Kiefer Hester actually ended up being our beaver voice because a lot of our voice actors fell through. And we really wanted a local voice actor, so I was like, well, you live with me, so I can force you into a recording booth, and you have no choice against it. And then it's just we did the layout and animation and compositing. And the thing with all these different stages is they overlap. Like I think there was points where we were like doing layout and animating, but we were still going back into the script and cutting stuff out to meet deadlines. Since it's such a small team, we didn't have a lot of bandwidth or a lot of money to keep working on it, so we just had to finish it. But I still think it turned out really well. Like we cut out things that were like not completely necessary, just there to be pretty. Although I would have liked to have those pretty things in. That's just the reality. This happens a lot in the animation industry. Although I am pretty green to it, I've talked to a lot of professionals and like other classmates who've done short films and stuff. This is kind of what happens where things like overlap and you're going back and forth and things get cut in the middle or like at the very end. It's quite unfortunate, but this is the life we live, and you make really cool stuff at the end of it. So I guess it kind of works. So, what next? Well, I'm set to graduate in 2026. And I'm going back to school in September, of course, doing a canoe trip. So, I'm living best of both lives.
What a terrific project, and what a great journey to get to where you are. I'm wondering about the film. Will it be translated into Cree?
Here's the thing. I want to do that, but it's a lot of work, and I'm in school and I'm working multiple different jobs like you saw, like I'm doing all this extra stuff on top of like my 9 to 5. So I think we're handing that off to the communication specialist at University Health Network to coordinate with our elder for him to translate and do the voice lines. So yes, we want to. I don't know if we'll be able to for our film festival release, but hopefully in the next couple of years we get this translated. But to get 5 minutes translated and recorded, that's a lot of work, especially just for me.
Who's the elder? Who's the speaker?
Greg Spence. He's been with us since like the initial idea. Yeah.
Yes, I worked with Greg a few times, several Cree fests, and also I ran ICMI out of Moose Factory for almost 3 years. And
oh, really?
I worked with him quite.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Greg's awesome, but he's a slippery fish to get a hold of.
Oh, is he ever?
He's busy. He's very busy.
Yeah. That's what a friend of mine told me once. If you want to get something done, ask a busy person. But yeah, he's really well, and he knows the different dialects, and yeah, he's really knowledgeable. That's terrific. Well, I hope it gets done. I hope it gets translated into Korea. I think it's an amazing resource, and
Definitely.
not just for the community, but to be shared, because people don't understand all the challenges in the north, and even during freeze up or breakup, having to take a helicopter to the mainland. Even with banking, there used to be a bank on the island, and now it's moved over to Moosonee. So if you have to do any kind of in-person banking, you have to take a helicopter during those. It's like, what is it, about 6 weeks throughout the year that it's in the boat.
Around there.
Yeah,
Around there. And it's
could be
it's
longer.
really annoying because the helicopter is like $50 one way over, not even including luggage. And even now the boat prices have gone up, so it's $25 to go over one way. So it's $50 if you want to go to Moosonee and do banking, or it's $50 if you want to go get a checkup. Like if it's not urgent checkup, if you're in Moosonee to get to the hospital, it costs money. They won't take you on the boat unless you're like urgent or a worker.
Wow, that's insane. I mean, when I was there, it was
Mhm.
$5.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I'm
it was
bringing
a
those
long
prices
time ago.
back.
Yeah, I know. Right? Elders were 3. Used to
Oh
be
my
elders were
god, bring
3.
those prices back.
Yeah, and they had just started putting the plastic, like the frame over top of the boats. When I first started, they didn't have those, so you were just in the open air, going back and forth. But
Yeah,
then they
some
started,
boats are still like that. Depending
yeah,
on if it's nice, they'll take the top off that day.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is lovely to go across when it's a beautiful day, and the wind, and it's just the smell, and being on the water like that is lovely. But yeah, it can get cold, and it can get if it's raining or whatever, it's a bit of a
I know when it's cold, it's bone chilling. Like I'm literally like huddled like down like this, trying to keep warm for like 3 minutes.
yeah, exactly. And getting anything shipped up there is like, it's like, and one year, I was visiting. I had moved, but I brought a bunch of students up from Ottawa, and I didn't make it up the bank. My van slid back, and then there was I couldn't. There had been a really big storm, and plus it was a high tide, and it was a full moon, so my van actually went into the water and got stuck, and we had to get I had to get they had to tow it out. People were taking pictures. Like I was up on the freight office for like years afterwards. Picture of my van, submerged.
That sounds so funny because that sounds exactly like here, where like anything happens, everyone starts taking pictures and posting on Facebook.
Yeah, we were trying to get out of the van, and my son was like maybe 10, not even, maybe 8 or 9 at the time. And I'm like, "Will you quit? Will you put your cameras down and help us?" Like, and they're, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure." Like, oh yeah, maybe we should. I'm thankfully we had a tow rope, so we were able to throw the tow rope, and but even still, it was and oh, it was crazy. It's so different. People don't really understand how incredibly different life is up
Yeah,
in the north.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I hope in the future I can bring my school friends up north so they just can experience what life is. Like life I feel like it's more complicated, difficult here, but also simple. It's more quiet, it's more community centric, you know. It's people are nosy. People want to know who you are and what you're doing cuz I'll be walking down the road and then people will literally be like driving by like watching me, trying to figure out who I am. And then sometimes I'll slow down and be like, "Who are your parents? I don't know them. Who are your grandparents? Oh."
Oh, you're them. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Um, my son's dad had passed, and but I wanted his grandparents really to know him, and so we went up there, and so I was Liam's mom for like 3 years. I was Liam's mom. That was Liam's mom. Hi, yeah, I'm Liam's mom. That was my name. Yeah, it was beautiful. Big sky. I miss that big sky.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of light pollution here, so you can really see all the stars.
Yeah. I remember I was inviting his Jaban over for supper. She goes, "No, there's a storm coming." And I was standing on my porch, and I'm like, "No, it looks clear." She goes, "Turn around." She's on the phone at the elders' lodge. Like, turn around. I turned around. Oh my God! The other half of the sky was like rolling, and oh man, it was so you wouldn't see that in the city. There's no way you wouldn't see the storm coming like that. Like so clearly. I'm like, oh yeah, I
Mhm.
gotta go inside.
Yeah, because it's like swampland, so you can't really build high or like big buildings because your building will sink.
Exactly. And to be able to animate that, you know, so that people can identify with it, and to help people understand what it's like. I think it's a terrific tool to use animation, because it's not it's like using the animals in the film. you know that I loved how the migratory birds, when I saw the geese and I saw the other birds, I'm like, oh yeah, that's because they only stay for a season and then they leave. And it's true. Like,
Yeah, it is true. And no shade to the doctors and nurses that come
oh,
here to get their first couple of years after they graduate of experience. Because it's extremely relevant. Like I remember I was down south in Oakville and I went to ER, and the doctor I got that came to see me, he worked in Moose Factory for a couple of years. And I felt really taken care of by him. Like his bedside manner was incredible. He talked about his time in Moose Factory, you know? So it's like these doctors that come here, like come and leave, they're taking this knowledge of being an indigenous community and acknowledging the trauma, intergenerational trauma and struggles here. They're carrying it with them into their careers. So I think it's great when they come up here and kind of like learn from the culture and take that and work with indigenous populations in the cities.
yeah, absolutely. It's an education that they couldn't possibly get anywhere else, and they wouldn't
Exactly.
have that experience to be able to really treat people, all of the whole person kind of thing that they need to,
Exactly.
because you're not just treating the person up there, you're treating the family, like you're treating everybody. If somebody comes in and their family comes with, and you get to know everybody.
Yeah, that's kind of like what the research Dr. Sahar Wali was doing, because we don't talk about a lot about that, treating the whole person, a little bit in the film, but the graphic report that I consulted on talks a lot about that we presented in Ireland. It talked a lot about like, your it's not just like what's your metrics, it's like what's in your heart. That's why our film's called Strengthening Our Hearts Through a River of Possibilities.
I love
It's
that.
because it's not just like actual heart health, it's like our community, our people, um treating the whole person, and that's really important. And I'm really glad I got to work on such an amazing project informed by that research. It's really really special to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Which film festivals have you applied to?
I can't say because we haven't been
Oh, that's right.
announced.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I know
should
they
know
haven't
better
they
than
haven't
to ask
released the
that.
roster yet, so I
Yeah,
actually legally cannot say
that's
what we've
it.
been submitted to. But
Yeah,
when we're done, do the film festival circuit, we will be posting it for people to see and doing local screenings in Moose City and Moose
fantastic.
Factory. Hopefully this fall.
Excellent. That'll be terrific. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
sure the community would love to see this.
I know, and we actually have like other communities being like, "How can I get this done for my community?" And it's like, this is a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this again.
Yeah, but it's great. I mean, you're introducing this idea of using animation. I
I
mean,
don't think
there
anything like this has ever been done up
nothing,
here.
not like this. No, no
Not on
way.
this scale.
Mm-mm. No, I don't, that I know of anyway. Um, maybe in other families, or maybe something, but nothing that I've heard of. But
No.
but yeah, it's really remarkable. I mean, when I was up there, there were so many artists, and people
Yeah.
like they don't see that. Oh, I'm not an artist. They just happen to have 20 canvases under their bed. Like, it's just something I do. I'm not an artist. Nobody would admit to being an artist. And yet the talent, it's incredible. I get blown away when I see the work that come out of. There was one young man I worked with, Jerry.
Oh, Jerry McComb.
Yeah,
He
Jerry.
was in the
Yeah.
same exhibition as me. Let's see if I can go back.
All right.
Oh,
Oh, where
this
was Prefest?
exhibition.
Where
He
was
was
Prefest?
here. Well, he wasn't physically here, but his art was in the same one. It's called Future of Our Lands.
Yeah.
And it was an exhibition at Creedfest. And this fall, actually, we're doing another exhibition in Toronto.
Fantastic.
TBD.
Right on. Where was Prefest held this year?
Cochrane.
Ah,
Well, it
yeah.
was in Cochrane, and we got invited out, and it was so nice because Mushkegowuk paid for my stay, my food. So I just kind of got to walk around, and I only had to show up for a couple hours a day to like talk with people at the artists gallery.
Fantastic. That's
And I
great.
got to meet a lot of other Omishkego artists, like not just from my community, but from like Fort Albany and like maybe Moose Crew members that live down south or in Alberta.
Wow.
There was some young girl I met. Well, not young girl. She's like 17, but to me, she's a young girl. She had this really incredible digital art piece, and she was living in Alberta down south, and this was her first time at Creefest and kind of meeting people from Moose Factory.
That's nice. That's really
Hmm.
cool. There's such an incredible, and to see your example of and getting into Sheridan, that's incredible. Like hardly anybody gets into Sheridan, so that people now can say, "Hey, we can do that."
And I really
Really,
promote the arts. Like I'm tutoring a couple of high school kids in community right now to like not get an animation, but just an art in general. And I really don't think there's enough like push for the arts here, because I when I graduated high school, I was like, I don't really want to do the arts. I want to do a job that makes me money. But people don't know that there's a lot of work out there for Indigenous artists.
absolutely, and it's a real develop. The sector is developing like exponentially, um, even from the time I think I left there in 2008. So I was there from like 2005 to about 2008. And even since then, I've seen how the sector has developed right across Canada. And it's pretty amazing. It really is to see how many more artists are coming out and how much more work is getting done and how many more opportunities there are for Indigenous artists. And so,
Hmm.
we really do need to be encouraging the young ones and offering more of that um, at in the schools and projects within the community.
And I mentioned briefly that I worked in elementary school while I was working on my portfolio,
Hmm.
and I already had a little bit of art education, and I was kind of good at drawing at that point. So I did workshops in classes, like if I was substitute teaching, and if we had like a break or something, I'd like go on like the smartboard and teach them how to draw certain characters and take like requests and stuff. So I'm a huge proponent of just like drawing is so fun. Even if you don't make it your career, it's so good for you like mentally to draw. It's like just a different way to express yourself. And we need to push it more in community. Like as soon as I get a little bit of money and I'm more established in my career, I want to do like I don't know, open up like a studio or something in community or like a gallery, just something to house all our art because we don't really have that right now. We used to have an art gallery in Moosonee, not anymore.
Wow. What happened to the art gallery?
I don't know. I think John Rubin would know more about that
Yeah.
probably because he was an artist in that art gallery. Like he had stuff exhibited
Hmm.
there. I don't know a lot about it. It was mentioned briefly to me by at
Hmm.
Creefest.
Yeah, John, his brother Sam is my son's motion.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh my god.
yeah, yeah. They have
Yeah,
a
we're
house
probably
really close.
cousins.
I bet, I bet we are.
Probably somewhere there.
I'll bet, yeah. Well, when you're related to the Rickards and to the Ludits, you're basically related to everybody because those are big families, like really big families.
Yeah, there's like 10 big families and they're all kind of related.
Yeah, yeah. It's incredible. It's funny how many people that I've spoken to, um, and there's a connection. You know, I think that's one of the amazing things about Indigenous community is that sooner or later you can always find a connection, and especially in a place like Moose Factory when it's such a little community. Physically, I mean, it's such a tiny community.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, so I'll bet there are. I bet there is cousins in there somewhere. But, yeah, it's incredible. His brother Henry too, also does a lot of visual art. John's brother Henry.
Ooh.
I'm not sure where Henry is though. I don't think he's living in Moose Factory right now.
Mm.
But yeah, amazing work. Like it's like wow. I mean, it's as good as, if not better than like a lot of the work you see in galleries. And people just they don't even think about it. They don't. Like I'm not an artist. It's just something I do. So when you graduate, so you have one more year in Sheridan, and
2 more
then
years.
2 more years. Is it a 4-year program?
Yes.
Yes, you're going
This
into
year
your
I'm doing group film, and then the next year I'm doing a thesis film, which is like a solo endeavor.
That's fantastic. What do you
I know.
think?
I really don't know what I'm gonna make yet. I'm kind of thinking like an indigenous story in stop motion because the group film I'm doing is stop mo already, and I think stop motion is such a beautiful format to tell indigenous stories in because it's like so authentic and like real. And ooh, I'll send this after, but I forgot. Stop motion department, the studio in Toronto, was animating a film for an Inuit artist telling not a tale, but like a traditional story about a creature like the Wendigo. Oh, I wish I knew it off the top of my head, but it's like telling indigenous stories like via stop motion or even puppets, like what's it, TP Tales?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so unique, and I think it's like the perfect format for it. Even though we did decide to do like the film that we did like 2D rigged. If we had the budget and time for it, I think it would have been a stop mo film.
yeah. It's so complicated and time consuming to do
Yeah,
stop
definitely.
motion animation. But I know it's. You're right. It really is authentic, and it really is. You can really get into the details of a story using that.
Hmm.
That'd be amazing.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you think
sorry.
you?
I don't know if you finished your question. I just cut you off and
No,
said
no.
that I'm going 2 more years of school.
Are you? Do you think you'll come home after?
You see, this is the question. This is the question because the thing about animation is after the pandemic, it became a largely online job. Like a lot of studios kind of like scattered, and they haven't come back really because they realize a lot of work can be done online. So I could really work anywhere. And the thing is, my boyfriend is still going to school. He's going to become a social worker and definitely wants to come home. I know I will come home. I don't know if it's going to be 2 years from now or 20 years from now. Um, Ideally, I want to get a lot of more studio experience working from more like different animation studios, like stop motion, 2D animation, script writing, storyboarding. Like, I want to learn all of it. So when I do come home, I'll be that much more equipped to teach people here because I keep thinking about this. Like, I have dreams about it. Is starting my own stop motion or like even like animation studio here and training up like young people because there's so much untapped artistic potential here. Like, so many kids are so good at drawing, and with online tutorials, they're learning even faster and more at a younger age, like even younger than I was when I started drawing a lot. And I want to tap into that potential and have more Indigenous animators, because I don't think I talked a lot about this, but being in a school setting, my school does have, I think, 3 Indigenous seats out of like 150 accepted applicants to Sheridan Animation a year. But a majority of the seats are Métis students and like no Inuit students. I think I'm might be the only First Nation student currently enrolled, unless a first year is coming in that's a First Nation student. So it's kind of hard to relate to people in my school, because the Métis people, most of them are urban based, where I'm kind of like, I'm half urban, half reserve, because I've lived half my life in the city and half of it at home. Um, so it's a little difficult to relate to people here, and I definitely code switch. I'm really glad I have my boyfriend here. But coming back to the topic of like coming home, I don't know. I do eventually want to come home, but I don't know when that will be.
Having an animation, I mean, that would be incredible. What a wonderful, because you're right, a lot of it can be done remotely, and it just depends on um, internet speed and some equipment.
Oh yeah, expensive equipment, but equipment.
Expensive equipment, yeah, yeah. And if you
But also
can,
the space. We're getting a lagoon, but you can't really build new properties, and a lot of properties have been like abandoned now here because I don't know if you know what's happening in the community, but there's a drug epidemic, and now the Moose Cree is actually doing something about it. So there's been a lot of, I guess, I don't want to get too into it, but drug dealers have been getting kicked out of their homes. There's a lot of abandoned homes, but they're not safe to live in. So we're kind of in a housing crisis. Like, I live with my mom, even though I have money to get my own place here, but there's nowhere to live. So it's like, in the future, what's that going to look like? I'm going to have to build a new property, rent out, or create like a garage on my mom's property and start a studio out of there. So it's like, space is also a huge issue here. We have a lot of overcrowded homes, like sometimes 15 people living in like a 4-bedroom house.
yeah,
It's a lot.
yeah, it was like that then, and they, I know there was a concern that it was going to get worse, and space was always an issue. Whenever we tried to run workshops or hold programming, or even create work, getting space to do that, we were always sharing space, or maybe we could sneak into the school for a couple hours, but it was always a challenge. It was
Mm-hmm.
always a challenge to get the space. We had one space for one project, and then partway through, it was like, oh no, we can't use that space anymore. So we had to quickly find other space. Thank goodness we were able to find it, and so we were in the second space, and it was just, it was a challenge. It was, and at one point I was kind of getting discouraged, and Jaban, she was wonderful. She's like, don't take this personally. This happens to everybody. Like, it happened to the Elders Lodge. I mean,
Oh my
it
god.
was. It's just something that it's just the nature of the space in the community, and where um, how how yeah, with the buildings, and with how you can use the buildings, and what buildings are available. And you're right, even then there was starting to be a few places like abandoned, so either they have to rebuild those places, and the community doesn't have a lot of money for that kind of thing either, so it's a real challenge.
Mm-hmm. But it's one I'm willing to try and overcome.
Yeah, I mean, if it's possible, if yeah, and plus, materials are always 3 times the price as they are in the South. I mean, even if you get them in the South and you still have to ship them up there, I mean, it's not insurmountable. And having that kind of a place like that in Moose Factory would be absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it would just be there. I know of a lot of people who have always wanted to have that sort of thing there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And doing the Future of Our Lands artist showcase at Fest made me realize, like, oh, there's a lot of serious artists here that do want this. Like, we were talking about having like an art gallery, And this is out of scope for me right now, but I had coordinators asking me, would you be willing to like run an art gallery and community? And I'm like, whoa, I'm in my early 20s, I'm still in school, but in the future, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, having people who have the interest and have the capacity, or being able to train somebody to be able. I'm running a gallery and being an artist. Those are two different things.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many artists I talk to who have gone into administration just because all the funding ran out and that was the only job that was left. But then they get stuck in admin and they can't get back to doing their artwork because
Oh, yeah.
they have to keep it going. Somebody has to keep it going, kind of thing. So
Mhm.
there's a big push, I know, with the council, like Canada Council and other arts funding organizations, where the Indigenous community has been saying this for a long time. We need art administrators. We need to support them as well as the artists, because you need that framework for the artists to be
Yeah.
able to show their work, to create work, you know, to to have a space. Somebody needs to run the space.
Mhm.
So just one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, we had talked about discussing digital sovereignty or Indigenous sovereignty, digital sovereignty, and
Mhm.
when we look at doing all this stuff online and posting online and working remotely, how do you see that impacting the work and uh, the sovereignty, not just of the images, but also of the cultural knowledge that goes into these projects?
Oh, yeah. Like, this is okay. These are my opinions. I don't speak for all Moose Creek people, but I'm definitely like a gatekeeper. Just because I have this experience in the city and at home. Like I've experienced at home, like people that never left here. I feel like, not to be mean, but they're a little naive when it comes to down south and how people are willing to take advantage of you, especially as like an indigenous woman. So there's certain things I absolutely do not ever share online. Like I don't share ceremony, and having I don't think we could really be completely sovereign online. There's certain things you just shouldn't share, because once it's out there, once it gets into the wrong hands, it will be taken advantage of. And I see it a lot on Facebook, like because in community, Facebook is like our lifeblood. Like we have the radio, but we don't have like news stations covering news. So often you'll see someone be like, "Oh, there's a fire way down," and everyone's taking videos and posting Facebook and being like, "Oh, so this happened." Like, and police and like the chief and council share reports on Facebook. That's how we get our news. I know Facebook is mostly dead out in the city, but like here, it's like our lifeline. Like we sell food, we buy stuff on there. It's how you keep in touch with everyone locally without action. And we also have like bulletin boards too, but Facebook is our main source. And I've seen it being taken advantage of online, because there are Facebook pages people will make, and they'll steal indigenous people's content and pretend that they're indigenous and based in indigenous communities, but then they're based in another country and don't know anything about us, really. They're just trying to use our clicks and views to make money off of. So they don't actually care about what's happening in our communities. Like they share our jokes, they share our culture, our clothes, our speech patterns. Like I don't think we can truly be like indigenously sovereign online, but I think the stuff we do share that we are okay with sharing, we have to be very careful about. But stuff that is out there, it belongs to everyone, and it helps us feel seen. Um, and it helps us stay informed and in touch with one another. Like there are people, like let's say urban natives who've never been in their home communities, and or even like indigenous people who've been in foster care. They're able to connect with some parts of their culture online. They'll see people dancing tutorials on how to bead, traditional patterns and stuff from their specific community. Like let's say like someone is a Moose Cree First Nation member, but they've never been in the community for various reasons or learned the language, they can search up Musqueam First Nation and see posts from like people here and kind of get a taste of the culture, and maybe that will interest them. They'll get curious and want to come here. Maybe live here, you know? So it kind of helps us, but we have to be very careful with what we share because it can be taken advantage of by people that don't care about us at all. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I'm definitely like gatekeep stuff that's sensitive and share stuff that is meant to be shared. And I think most people can judge what that is.
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. It's really hard because, people will share things in with good intention, but then it gets taken. I know there was, in my own community, there was a ceremony that was shared with a different community, and that the people in that community actually posted it. And everybody was really upset about that because that was ceremony and it shouldn't have been posted. And they were concerned that, it was going to be taken and people were going to start making money off it. Because
exactly.
People then like learn the ceremony as it was posted online and then start doing the ceremony. And often these people aren't even Indigenous. And then they're charging people to do this ceremony with them. And they're like, oh, I was taught by an authentic Indigenous person. And, like that makes
this happens a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really challenging. And there's also sometimes in different communities there are different protocols around how we teach our kids, and like the oral, the storytelling, the observance, the actual, you see how it's done and then you do it. Or there's protocols around in some communities around which images can be used or how the images are stylized. I don't think we have that as much out here, out east, as they do more out west. In my community, it has more to do with stories and songs and dances. So I've been gifted some stories that I can tell, but as a knowledge carrier, sometimes I go into schools or I go, into different places, and I can tell these stories. But when a teacher comes to me and says, "Oh, can you write that story down for me? I want to make puppets with my class." I'm no. No. Are you going to have an elder come in? Are you going to, like you can't? There's so many layers to these. These are sacred stories, and I'm wondering if there's anything like that you have found where. How do you take these protocols and how do you use them? Like how do you incorporate them into your work, or have you found this to be a thing that you incorporate into your work? And when you're creating digital or animation, does that ever come to play at all?
Yeah. I've never really had like a consistent Indigenous mentor. It's mostly been like my lived experience. Um, I avoid sharing stuff that are too traumatic revolving our people, but there's subtle ways you can incorporate our themes and our stories into work with it being subtle but still interesting and getting people to think. Um, so I won't ever share like actual traumatic things happening, but you can use symbolism to represent them. And I'll share this image with you later, but in 2021 when Kamloops happened, like what happened in Kamloops, like the discoveries, I was really, really sad because we finally had proof and confirmation that this had been happening. People have been saying this for a while, what was happening at residential schools. I felt so moved that I just started drawing as like a coping mechanism. And it was these hanging moccasins on tree lines, and there was like 100 of them, but it was leading off and down off frame to kind of represent that like there are more children to be found. And that piece ended up getting shared. I shared it with Mishigegwak, and they really liked it, and they ended up paying for the rights to use it as part of their campaign, like their orange shirt campaign.
Mm-hmm.
um and I had certain protocols there that I followed by, where it's like you cannot put this on swag because it's going to probably end up in the garbage. You can make canvases of it because that's, I feel like, is more respectable. And some of the canvases, they made three, and three of them, I have one of them. They're still hanging. There's one hanging up here at the Moose Factory Mushkegowuk office, and there's another hanging in Timmins, I believe. So the art and the message are being respected in a way that I feel is okay. And those are kind of like my protocols, when handling this sensitive information, or even talking about ceremonies. It's very important context stays with it, and I will do everything in my power to not the context rip from it. And I think that's how a lot of other Indigenous artists operate too. Um, that's kind of my experience with it. I don't think, at least from what I know, there's a lot of like protocols for our practices. I feel like Moose Cree, like Moose Factory, I'm I don't know if this is controversial or not, but we're largely colonized. We don't have a lot of Moose Cree speakers left. Like, we have less than 100, and we have the Moose Cree language project happening to kind of like standardize our language and preserve it. And we have recordings of elders, but we don't have a lot of speakers. Whereas, like in other communities, like in Alberta, their culture has been more preserved, and there's been Moose Cree people that moved to Alberta to like keep the language and the ceremonies alive. So it's definitely like there's more clear protocols there, but not a lot of that I know of that are like clear, like these are the rules. It's more of just like intuitively I know these things, and I'm practicing what I think with good intentions of how our culture should be perceived. I'm never going to do anything that makes us look bad.
That's excellent. That's exactly the kind of thing I was thinking of. So I think it's amazing that you've thought about these protocols. I hadn't thought of the swag one, where the work, yeah, will end up, half the time it ends up in the garbage. That's true, and it's not being respected. So maintaining that image on canvas and keeping it in a way that it will be taken care of, I think is hugely important, especially when you look at the context and when you look at the topic that
Mm-hmm.
these images are dealing with. So I want to thank you, Kachimi Gwich, yourself, for taking the time to speak with us today. I learned a lot, and and I look forward to seeing the film when you can, and
Mm-hmm.
to seeing more of your work. So thank you very much, Kachimi Gwich.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, Monique. It was so nice. It was so lovely to talk to you today and learn that there's like a little hidden connection between us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, get you, Gudge.